We all get so busy and caught up in all the great things we do in terms of teaching and research. Innovation Bound is a very, very special day. A day for us to take a step back, look back, and reflect on the achievements we have done, on the impact we have made collectively together. At the same time, it's also a very, very important day for us to look forward, see what we have learned over the past year collectively, and where we want to head in the next year.
My work is important because it looks at what some of the understudied and less understood factors are that might contribute to women's undernutrition and food insecurity. Domestic violence may be a much greater contributing factor to women's undernutrition than we have previously realized. Our work really shows the importance of focusing on what women need and women's specific experiences, because our work shows that women oftentimes eat last and least, skip meals, in order to protect their own children. And so if we're looking at just the nutritional status of children, we might really be missing even more undernutrition among their mothers and other women in the household.
When I was in graduate school, my professor said the study of inequality is like watching the grass grow. And I realized when I got into it 20 years ago that you couldn't really say anything new or interesting unless you had brought some new information, some new data, some new measurements to bear. With my students, we worked out a way to actually add to this stock of information. And the result is a very large body of new information. The world, it's able to show that both in the United States and in a larger, even global setting, the forces of financial globalization, the forces of credit booms and busts, of debt crises, of exchange crises. These are very powerful forces affecting economic inequality just about everywhere.
The principal finding from my publication is that immigration is not a problem to be solved. It's a phenomena to be managed. Humans have been migrating since the beginning of time, and we just need to have sophisticated, humane, reasonable ways to manage these flows, protecting the sovereignty of our nations and respecting the rights and dignities of people that are migrating. I propose in my report or my paper a multi-tiered way to prioritize the flow of immigrants and immigration governance. That is a lot like Maslow's hierarchy of needs or the FDA's food pyramid, in that I start with the core things that are essential and then the different elements that are the key ingredients to having effective immigration governance for the 21st century.
So the aim of the article was to think about how we can systematize knowledge about human resource management, but public policy more broadly. And I think one of the strengths of the article is that we look at two case studies which are important to a particular area that I've researched that I'm interested in. And we really sort of dissect how to think about how to build these particular areas of research. And we encourage other scholars to use the same sort of method for thinking about how they can build their areas of research as well.
Red China's Green Revolution uses data that we've never had before to explain the role that the commune played in Chinese economic development. In the past, we thought that the commune was a failure, but through this new data and application of social science theories, we're able, for the first time, I believe, to truly understand the contribution that the commune and the people who worked within it made to China's current development scheme and the China Miracle, as it's known.
With my co-author, Jason W. Moore, who I met at the history seminar here at University of Texas, I have written a book called A History of the World in 7 Cheap Things. Now, the idea of this history is to explain capitalism, about how it came to be, what it refuses to pay its bills for, and how it is that now we're coming to the end of the era of cheap things. And so if you're curious about how to tackle climate change, or wage inequality, or gender inequality, this is a book that explains where those things come from and what it is that we might do about it in the future. And the messaging in this book was really made possible by the chance to teach some of it here at the LBJ School.
So this research project was looking at the opportunities for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in China in particular, but it's derived from this wider interest in looking at the major economies of the world and seeing which ones are most important in terms of contributing to this problem and which sectors within those countries are most important in creating greenhouse gases, and then trying to understand, okay, which ones of these are easier or hard to address. Because that might help policymakers figure out where are there opportunities for policy advancement and which are the sectors that might be really challenging. And in the Chinese context, we found that the strength of the Chinese state makes us somewhat optimistic about their capacity for reducing emissions in some of the main industrial sectors. And in their scope for phasing up renewables, we were a little bit more pessimistic that the challenges could be overcome, but we identified ways in which they might think about it through reorganization of government structure, or also just sheer political commitment and financial resources.
My most recent book on the Impossible Presidency studies how this office has evolved over time and the ways in which the evolution in the office has deeply affected our policymaking as a society. My book seeks to provide us with a better understanding of contemporary challenges and insights about how a new generation of students will reinvent executive leadership for our new challenges.
Right now, Ireland is facing one of the biggest policy challenges that it has in decades. Ireland is looking to reform its extremely restrictive abortion law. What kind of situation does that leave people in Ireland when they can't access abortion in the formal healthcare setting? So we set about looking at this through research. We did that by partnering with a telemedicine organization that actually provides abortion pills, mifepristone and misoprostol, to women in Ireland so they can self-manage their own abortion at home. We found that the medication abortions people self-managed at home were as effective as in the clinical setting and had very, very low rates of complications. However, we also found that people had the weight of a criminal law hanging over their heads when they did these abortions at home themselves. They were also really cut off from medical services, so they were not able to go and consult with a healthcare provider either before or after their abortion. So these results have some really serious implications for those who are charged right now with trying to figure out, should Ireland reform its current law and what should it replace it with? So we brought these results to the Irish Parliament and we were able to use them to inform both the policy and the public conversation to try to educate people about what Ireland's abortion law means for people in Ireland and what those outcomes might look like.
People have lots of biases in terms of how they access information and how they deal with decision making, especially big ticket decisions. This paper addresses this issue through the use of serious games, which is basically using game design elements, so elements from gamification, like let's say video game, to take a simple example, for non-game purposes. So for example, educational purposes or giving information for decision making. We have shown in this paper that by using this type of an interactive, fun format, which has this gamification elements to it, we are able to address multiple biases all at the same time in a significant way.
So we evaluated a program called the Fatherhood Effect Program, which is a program that provides services in 4 different communities across Texas to fathers who are in multiple different settings. And by evaluating this program, we used multiple methods. We looked at administrative data, we looked at survey data, we conducted focus groups and interviews, and we looked at fathers both before they started the program and how their attitudes and knowledge and behaviors changed as a result of the program. And it's an important first step in our understanding of how programs designed to better engage fathers with their children can really meet the dad's needs and make sure that they keep coming back and that they learn the skills that are necessary, because we know that father's involvement is really important for children's long-term well-being.
But particularly in the last 10, 20 years or so, I've been working on new areas of thinking in terms of low-income housing policy towards informal squatter settlements, if you like, in Latin America. The study that I presented for this particular occasion is actually based upon two settlements, data gathered in two settlements just outside San Marcos, two informal homestead subdivisions, largely Hispanic, people buying property without services 20, 30 years ago, establishing themselves there, building their own homes. And what that particular project was looking at was really the intersection between the dwelling environment, the lot on which they live, the dwellings in which they live, whether these are trailers or self-built dwellings, and health and poor health, and particularly among aging populations.
This policy research project was done for the Congressional Research Service. This is the third in a series that I've done for Congressional Research Service regarding how members of Congress and congressional committees use social media. And in this one, we wanted to look beyond Facebook and Twitter, which are ubiquitous now, even among members of Congress, and see what else they were using. And YouTube, it turns out, is now used as much as Facebook and Twitter by members of Congress, and then followed by Instagram and Google+, Medium, Snapchat, some of those others. The importance of this research is to look at how members of Congress are communicating amongst themselves and with their constituents. What difference has social media made in how they run, how they're elected, how they govern, and how policy is made?
One of the challenges of natural disasters is very often people lose their homes. And it's hard to figure out how to enable them to reconstruct their homes. The United States has various programs, and they work one way or another. But this was a class about how in Nepal, after the severe 1915 earthquake, the government was enabling rural villagers to reconstruct their homes. Students had the opportunity to travel to Nepal, to live in villages, to stay overnight, to talk with people living there who are trying to rebuild their homes. The issues are really not about equipment or construction or materials as much as how people are able to accomplish things in real life with real institutions.